Welcome to the Pod of Inquiry, pushing the envelope for human understanding and optimization, the podcast for podiatrists. The Pod of Inquiry is designed to empower you with knowledge. What happens from there is up to you. Your host, Dr. Stephen Barrett, has designed this show to take you down some very deep rabbit holes, hopefully bringing you back out again, relatively unscathed, but cerebrally whipped, enabling a better understanding of all things worthy of inquiry. If you have more questions after the show, then that is good. The new discovery today many times was the new discovery 50 years ago, only to be suppressed or plainly ignored. Medicine and surgery can sometimes take a long while to get their paradigm shifted. We hope to have a lot of fun on this show and maybe destroy some ridiculous dogma along the journey. Thanks for joining the show today. Let's start spelunking.
I'm really excited about our guest and show this week. I've got Dr. Nayan Patel, a PharmD, who's developed a very unique delivery mechanism for the topical administration of glutathione as my guest. I discovered him and his work at the A4M meeting last spring, where he gave me a copy of his book, The Glutathione Revolution. Frankly, I didn't really know that much about glutathione except for the fact that the molecule is an excellent antioxidant until reading his book. Dr. Patel needs to be complimented first on how well written the book is, especially when you look at the audience. Could be ranging from anyone who doesn't know anything about biochemistry to someone who has a very solid understanding, and they will get a greater appreciation of what this special molecule really does physiologically and how important glutathione is not only in the maintenance of general health, but in the treatment of myriad conditions. Dr. Nayan Patel is globally regarded as one of the go-to experts on absorbable forms of glutathione and holds the only patent on transdermal glutathione. In addition to many other topics such as cellular function and hormone replacement, Dr. Patel is a highly sought-after global authority on the critical role in that of glutathione and all other antioxidants and endogenous molecules at play in the human body. Along with traveling the world educating practitioners on advanced biochemistry and anti-aging science, Dr. Patel also serves as adjunct faculty at the University of Southern California School of Pharmacy, where he is also an alumnus. In today's episode, we discuss what glutathione really is and how he developed a functional topical delivery form, how the body prepares to heal its own problems through the glutathione pathway, the relationship with N-acetylcysteine and glutathione for supplementation, how aging affects glutathione production. We discuss glutathione as the mother of all antioxidants. We discuss how important it is from an anti-inflammatory standpoint and how it plays with some of the multifactorial neuropathic processes that we deal with. It was such a great pleasure for me to learn from Dr. Patel so much about glutathione and how important it really is. I know you'll find this episode truly fascinating, and there's a high likelihood that after listening to this episode, you'll start using this daily on yourself as well as prescribing it or recommending it for many of your patients. So let's get at it. Let's start spelunking. Good morning. I'm here with Dr. Nayan Patel, PharmD, who has developed a very unique delivery mechanism for a topical glutathione product that I've had the great fortune of actually using myself. And in fact, if you consider N of 1 experiments, I have 4 of them now that impressed me with so much with his technology and his product that I begged him to do this interview because we've got to get this message out to a lot of people. Good morning, Dr. Patel. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your very valuable schedule to share information on glutathione.
Glad to be here, Dr. Barrett. Thank you.
So, before we start, I want to just kind of tell my story. I've known for a long time how powerful IV glutathione is for patients, and we have infused that for several years in many of our neuropathic patients. But when I met you at the A4M meeting, you had describe this topical delivery mechanism. And I'd actually had the fortune to experience some very painful situations. One, a shoulder where I couldn't even lift it. And after one application, it dropped the pain at least half. And then the next morning, after another application that evening, it was like the shoulder had never even been hurt. So that was when I first became really impressed with it. Got into some red ants, bit up my wrist. I said, well, let's try this. Applied your topical glutathione to that. Next morning, they were completely gone. And they had, in fact, vesicles on them when I was applying the glutathione. So it was pretty incredible. And then I think the one that just kind of put me over that made me call you was a hornet bite to the end of my left ring finger, which maybe was one of the most intense pains that I've had. And it literally, within about 30 minutes or so, knocked the pain down significantly, but it was still to the point where when I would even move the finger, it felt like the stinger was still in there. So this was a Saturday evening. I operate on Monday mornings, and I'm thinking this is going to be a problem because this finger is going to be swollen up like you can't believe the next morning. So I applied some more that evening, woke up the next morning. There was zero redness, zero edema, and in fact, it was like I had never even been stung. And I believe that's what prompted me to give you a call and reach out to you to say, listen, I understand how important glutathione is as a antioxidant and a detoxifier, but this is so powerful for acute situations that, and I've used topical pain creams before, and they, while many of them work pretty well, nothing even approached what your product did for me. So that's kind of what generated my interest in this. And it's always, one thing to read a lot of journal articles, but then when you have that one experience, that clinical experience of yourself, it's a very powerful reinforcer. So I know that was a very long-winded introduction, and I wanted to just ask you first to start off is, how did you get here to glutathione?
Oh boy. Yeah, it's a long story, but the short answer to that one was, as a pharmacist, we would like to work on molecules that has not just the symptomatic relief benefit that we are all accustomed to having in medicine, but have a far-reaching solution to going to the root cause. And it's like what they say, all roads leads to Rome. I found out that all symptoms are leading back to oxidative stress, and the main thing that the body produces was glutathione. And so I said, well, it's been discovered since 1921. We don't have a good solution at this point. We have lots and lots of products on the market, but nothing really works. So myself and my partner in crime, my PhD, and we just got to work and see if we can figure out a better way to stabilize and deliver. So that was the whole calling. Of course, we have a daytime job, so we're still filling prescriptions and making medications and all those things. But on the side, we started working on glutathione. It took us about 3 years and implement different theories to, first of all, discover a stabilized molecule. And this was 2009. And so it's been a long journey since then.
So I see that you were a mechanical engineer before you ended up into the pharmacological world, and that had to play a big role in your thought processes and how you came upon this idea to develop this delivery system.
Well, with an engineering background, every cause is associated with a reaction, right? Everything happens for a reason. And we tend to believe if I do this, it moves here, and it's supposed to be in a linear, systematic manner. But so when I approach medicine, I always look for causing what's the actual cause of the problem. And of course, most medicine healthcare provider will think as a global approach and not in simple terms. And of course, my mechanical engineering background started to figure out, hey, look at it, looking for simple answers. Look for simple answers, because don't make it overly complicated. Because if you start thinking about all the different variations of what could happen, you will never start anything. And medicine is like that. What you do every single day. For every differential diagnosis, you have to go through so much different things to try to find out what the actual cause is. And so I was trying to compartmentalize the whole process on what I'm going to be working on. And that really helped me hone down on what I need to work on. And of course, I had my partner in crime, Dr. Tran, that was literally looking at a big picture and taking my information and literally putting into practicality. So I'm a theoretical guy. I design theories, and then I have somebody else to actually go in the lab and make the stuff that I just discovered in theory. So it absolutely helped me out. But again, I never finished mechanical school, and there was a reason for that, because my heart was still in chemistry, and I really wanted to do something more with in the chemistry world than the mechanical world.
Yeah, I understand that the engineering mind. My son is a mechanical engineer, and I think it's something that it's a blessing. You either get mathematics easy or you have to struggle with it. And I think the engineering mind is one of those very special things. And I think when you're able to combine that with biochemistry, then that allows you to come up with these things like the delivery system that you've come up with. So that leads into my next question. You point out, and I've got to talk about your book just a little bit, because I think it's extremely well written. It's called The Glutathione Revolution. We'll link to it on our show notes for the podcast. But the way you wrote it and the way you integrated some patient clinical scenarios, as well as how well you explained the biochemistry, and then at the end, you give an action plan for different things: detoxing, basically skin rejuvenation, which the ladies will love, even some of the men, and then the antioxidant plan. So not only did you educate us with this book and in a very understandable manner, you gave us clinical vignettes, which are very valuable, and then you gave us an action plan. And I'd like to preface everything we say today is that there is no magic bullet, and you point out very well that you have to have good nutrition, you have to have good sleep. These are the cornerstones of health. But then with supplementation of the things that need to be supplemented, now you're going to get that real effect. And so with that being said, let's go back to the bioavailability question, because I think, there are a lot of oral supplements out there that claim that they will increase your levels of glutathione. And so I want you to talk about that, maybe the sublingual, and then we'll kind of follow up from there, because I think there's a lot of people taking a lot of things that are not, they're not getting to where they need to go.
And that is absolutely correct. As a pharmacist, I fill prescriptions every single day. There's 3,000 medications in my pharmacy that I can honestly say that they may help you with your symptoms relief, but they may not get to the root cause of the problem. And so it's very hard for me to say this thing as a pharmacist, that I'm selling medications on a daily basis, knowing that it's only going to manage your problem, not get rid of the problem. And so I want to get out of management, and I want to get into the getting rid of the problem section as much as possible. And the only way I can do that is not to take control of my body, myself, but to give the control back to the body so that it can regulate itself. Our body is absolutely fascinating, and it can heal its own problems. What we fail to recognize is, what does the body needs? Rest, right. Nutrition, right? Stress-free life, right? It needs those kind of things. By all means, we don't need to have a big mansion. The body doesn't need that part. It can sleep on a cot in an open air field all day long and be happy about it. And so mind, body, everything needs to come into alignment And if you do that part correctly, our body can self-heal itself. And you mentioned my book has all these different things, and I have a great plan to get you started. But it's a 14-day plan, but guess what? It's been my plan for the last 25 years. It's not a 14-day plan to jumpstart. It's my daily lifestyle. So it's not something to boost and get healthy in 14 days. Is embrace this as a way of life. I like to tell all my kids, learn to acquire the taste of good habits.
Yes. Well, it takes a while to develop good habits. And I think that one of the hardest things even for myself is, I know something may be good for me, but when I understand the biochemistry and the physiology behind it, then it's like, wow, okay, I really don't want to have that artificial sweetener and mess up the tight junction in my columnar epithelium. So I get it. It gives me more of an impetus to not, throw the artificial sweetener in the coffee in the morning. So I think the more that we can educate our patients, the more they will adopt these things to try to make them habits and routines of lifestyle. But I think what you said about having 3,000 plus medications in your pharmacy, today we're just symptom treaters. And so somebody comes in and they have, let's say, peripheral neuropathy, because we're going to talk a lot about peripheral neuropathy, but they also have significant insulin resistance. They're not sleeping well. They're eating junk food right and left. And it's unrealistic for those patients to expect us to give them this magic pill. Now, sometimes we're able to give them something that, might put a Band-Aid on it, but if your host isn't ready for that pharmacology, then it's going to be impaired in its efficacy as well.
Absolutely. And you just nailed it right there, right? It's how do we prepare the body to accept what we are going to give them,
right?
To heal, right? And so,
right.
Yeah, you just nailed it. I don't have to add anything else more than that.
Well, it's pretty incredible when, some of these patients that the patients that I ultimately love are the ones that jump in, once you take the time to educate them, they jump in full bore. And they come back and we're looking at something, some burning in their legs or feet, and they're telling me how their kidney function got better and how their eyesight got better and how they think clearly, more clearly. And it's like, well, we've made the human better and more optimized. So these things get better. The body is miraculous, like you say, and it can heal up a lot of these things that are there. And then I think the other point to make is that once we get the body straightened back up, let's prevent it from getting these things, these comorbidities, right? So, so those are really, so tell me a little bit about oral supplementation. You talk about S-acetylglutathione in your book. Give us a little information on that.
So, there are so many different supplementations orally you can take. The most common ones are, of course, in glutathione capsules. Some are acetylated form of glutathione. Everything we try to do is to try to trick the body that eventually your body will break it down into making glutathione. And unfortunately, any form that we take orally in the pure form of glutathione, either if it's acetylated or pure glutathione, the body will break it down into various amino acids. And then the body will try to take those amino acids and make glutathione again. It'd be very easy to take amino acids to begin with and let your body make glutathione. That's why N-acetylcysteine, which is one of the three amino acids in glutathione, is so popular because cysteine is the rate limiting step in making glutathione in our body. It's not abundantly available in diet. And so taking supplementation of cysteine really actually helps you helps your body with the raw material, so to speak, it needs to make glutathione. But at the end, we're still depending on our body to have the ability and the enzymes necessary to produce the glutathione that it needs.
Now, one of the things you pointed out in your book was that as with almost all things, as we age, we make less. Yes. Particularly, we make more of the bad stuff and less of the good stuff. put it that way.
Unfortunately.
So let's say if you're at age 40, how does your level of glutathione just naturally compare to when you're 60?
So after the age of 30, you're dropping roughly about 10% of your production of glutathione by every 10 years. And that doesn't sound too bad because, hey, if I lose 10%, it's okay. It's not so bad, right? 10%, and then by age 40, you lost 20% and 30% and so on and so forth. But what's happening is that people don't realize that it's not that we have reduced the production by 10%. What we have done in actuality is that we have increased our toxic load in the body by 10%. So even though the production is reduced by 10%, the ability for the body to clean itself or to detoxify is reduced by 10%. So the toxic load has increased by 10%. And that toxic load is not a short-term thing. That load that you just increased over time has an exponential growth. So even though your production has gone down, the need for cleaning your body is growing exponentially, like a hockey stick. Mm-hmm. And so by the age of 40 and 50, your production is only gone down by 20 to 30%, but your need has far, far exceeded what your body will ever be able to produce. And that's where the problem lies.
So I think that's an important point, and you have a segment in your book talking about what you found in the centenarians that were tested. That I believe you were measuring in that study the glutathione reductase rather than anything else, and you found compared to it was 40 to 60-year-olds that were the control group in these centenarians were magnitudes more.
And yeah, so they did not lose the ability to produce glutathione.
So they were genetically blessed.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Not everybody is.
No. And I think those are, I think people that live to be 100 are genetically blessed from an insulin resistance standpoint as well. We've seen that in the literature. But that's a fascinating thing because it makes me want to get back to having you tell us everything that glutathione does, because this is a super important molecule for human physiology. So let's talk about the antioxidant, why they call it the mother of all antioxidants, and how it can detoxify. And you explain all this in the book, but it's really fascinating stuff, how this molecule can then reload itself. So give us a thumbnail sketch on that.
So let me ask you. Let me just tell you something else on the other side, right? Okay. So, what does glutathione does for us? It's like asking the question: what can money buy? Can you make a list of things that you can buy? I mean, the list can go up books and books of pages of things that you can buy, right? Of course, there's some things you cannot buy. And so, what does glutathione does for a body is enormous, because it's, on the grand scheme, it's one of the things that it really does good for us is to reduce oxygenation or oxidative stress, which is any supercharged particles in our body. It neutralizes them. Of course, we need the oxidation in our body happening every single day, because little stress is good for your body to improve resilience and improve the effectiveness of our body to perform. But once that is done, we'd like to reduce oxidative stress as fast as possible, because too much stress is actually damaging our body in the long term. So that's...
Yeah. So, one of the things people, exercise creates, oxidative stress, and it's one of the best medicines known to man, but then the body takes care of it, right? Yeah. So you go back about, toxins, right? So these exposures are going to, increase oxidative stress as well. Certain things that we eat, linoleic acid, those things. So sometimes we look at like raw species as like they're all bad, but they have some important signaling mechanisms as well.
Yes, they do. No, we're not saying the free radicals are bad for you, but overexposure to free radicals for long durations of time is what's actually causing the problem. Right. So it's like, is water bad for you? No, water is not bad for you, but you put a piece of nail inside the water, eventually it's going to get rusted.
Right.
And so you still need the water to clean the nails, but if you leave it for long enough, it's going to get rusted. We don't want rust on the nails. We just want it to be cleaned. And so, like water, glutathione is absolutely important for us to clean our body from inside. But at the same time, we want to make sure that little oxidation is still happening every single day. And that's going to happen regardless, because we breathe oxygen every single second, right? So that's going to happen regardless. What we are worried about is those organic phosphates, organic chemicals that we ingest from our vitamin supplementations, from the food we eat, from the processed meats we eat, and things like that. And those are actually, if they are fat soluble, they're getting deposited in our body, and they get sequestered in our body, kind of put them in a ball so that nobody can get to it. But that will rust, so to speak, internally, that your body has to clean up that rust. But more importantly, it's not just cleaning up that oxygen species that is creating all this ROS species in our body, but to actually get rid of that eventually, like heavy metals. How are we going to get rid of heavy metals from our body? So the glutathione not just improves the electron transfers and neutralizes the electronically charged molecules, but it can also conjugate with this chemicals and make them water soluble, so you can either pee them out or you can dump it in the intestines and you can poop it out. And so it has multiple functions. So
one of the things that we see surprisingly in a lot of our neuropathic patients are some very heavy metal levels. And mercury, lead, I've seen very high cobalt levels in patients that have had artificial hips that just kind of disintegrated. And we're very aware of chelation therapy and IV chelation as well as oral chelation. But it would seem to me that if you were going to use some type of chelation therapy, this would be, part and parcel of trying to get that toxic load down.
And the thing is, our body does not produce chelators like EDTA and EMS and things like that. Our body produces glutathione to keep it safe and sound from all these invaders that comes through the body all the time. And so, of course, glutathione is not the most powerful chelator out there, but chelation is something that needs to be happening every second of your life. Mm-hmm. Not when you just give an IV push for next 30 minutes or so, and then that's when it chelates what's in your blood, and the rest of it, the rest of the body is still there. And so having glutathione levels optimized at all times, we have a fighting chance to keep all these heavy metals in control, in check, and so that hopefully that's not going to get deposited into small capillaries and gives you neuropathy or eye diseases and things like that. So long term, we have a fighting chance of not having to suffer because of all these heavy metal toxicities in our body.
So when we see a patient initially, patients like metrics, and it's, if there's a scoreboard, then people want to play the game. It's just that way, and that's why, measuring biomarkers, blood, studies, levels of, toxic metals in urine testing. These are real important things because a person has a baseline. They can then see after 3 months or 6 months how they've improved. I guess there's a couple of questions. So we know that we diminish our ability to produce glutathione as we age, so we really need to supplement it, much like nitric oxide. I've done a nice podcast with Nathan Bryant, who's really one of the world's experts in nitric oxide. But as far as glutathione, it's probably a molecule that turns over quite rapidly. Is that not correct? Yeah, okay.
Yes, it's one of those proteins that has a very short life. And the life depends on where the glutathione is. So if it's in the red blood cells, the body can literally keep it in there intact, not get oxidized for up to 2 to 3 days. Right? Internally produce. Even in the blood cells or even in the cells of the body, if it's inside the mitochondria, it can stay for a little bit longer. Once outside the mitochondria, it's probably staying in maybe 4 to 6 hours. But once it gets into the plasma or outside the cells, then literally it's out in like 10, 15 minutes.
So if we apply the Glutaril, the topical that you have, take me through that journey. It gets into the bloodstream, and then it's disseminated throughout the body. What about the blood-brain barrier?
So we don't know everything yet. So we did the original study was done in 2010 when we first discovered the molecule. We just wanted to figure out. I said, "Hey, is it getting to your bloodstream in the first place?" Right. So that was a small pilot study done. This was 10 years ago. It was something that I did on my own. I was not funded by any company, so to speak. So I just did it, like a couple of patient trials just to see what was happening. And of course, I didn't think too much at that time because I did not understand everything about glutathione at that time. So what we found out was that, yes, after application of glutathione, within 15 minutes, we saw a spike in the blood levels. We did the whole blood concentration at that time. We did the blood levels. And at 45 minutes, we saw a peak plasma levels, or peak serum levels of glutathione, which was literally high normal range. And because, oh my God, this is the first thing we have seen for that is actually crossing the skin and getting to your bloodstream. So there's an effective way to, in fact, raise your glutathione levels. And of course, I didn't understand all the mechanisms of how it was getting there. All I knew was it was there. So fast forward, of course, I'm a pharmacist and I'm a clinical pharmacist. So I work with physicians all over the United States and, in fact, all over the world. And I consult with doctors in Europe and Asia and South America and places like that. So I've been a teaching pharmacist on many physicians on drug therapies. And of course, when I discovered this, I said, oh my God, there's a way to improve glutathione levels. And then the doctor asked me, what is it going to do? I said, I don't know. I just don't know what it's going to do. Right. So that's what happened. That's what led my journey, right? Since 2010 till 2019, 9 years, we have treated thousands of patients with the physicians, with the prescription, and try to understand that. And that's when we wrote the book, The Glutathione Revolution, all the things I found out. And we all know what happened in 2020. This pandemic hit at 2020 when the book got published. We had the professors at the university put in an application for human trials. And of course, everything was shut down. Right. We got everything shut down. And it wasn't until May of 2022, which was just a couple of months ago, a few months ago, that we got our first human trials approved by IRB. And so the study is on its way at this point. And we're getting some data that is going to blow people's mind up pretty soon.
Now, what are you studying in that study per se?
So the study is literally what we are seeing is that what we saw back 13 years ago is reduplicate that part and actually find out that is it actually increasing whole blood or is it actually increasing red blood cells levels, which is way different. What we do know is that it stays in your blood for about up to 4 to 6 hours. So in theory, it tells me that it is actually getting inside the cells, because we already know the flip side that if it stays in the plasma, it's the half-life is only about 14 minutes. And that study was already been proven when they give the intravenous therapy of IV glutathione. It stays in the body for about 14 minutes, plus or minus 9 minutes. And it's in about 30 minutes, you have the most expensive urine in the world because all the glutathione is in the urine. Versus when we did the other study, it shows that it was 4 to 6 hours. But again, we need to duplicate that part. So we're doing that one. But the professor that is at the university that has done literally about half a dozen to more than a dozen studies on glutathione itself, he's basically claiming that we should be seeing a reduction in oxidative stress to almost negligible in less than 72 hours. And this is absolutely barbaric in any medical history, because how can you reduce oxidative stress from very high to zero in 72 hours and keep it that way? And so that is something that we will be testing. The IRB have asked us to add more things. So they are testing Mycobacterium avium because the original studies that were done by the doctor, the professor at the university, did the study on Mycobacterium tuberculosis that have very good success with using supplementation of glutathione and reduction of medication from 1 year to less than 3 months. And he's bullish that if given the right form of glutathione, we might be able to eradicate Mycobacterium itself, TB, avium, whatever that is. And so the IRB has asked us to study that as well. But that study is going to be in vitro, not in vivo. And so there's multiple things that the IRB has requested for us to study above and beyond just what we proposed to them originally. So we should have to get the results by end of September, and hopefully by December we will get this published.
Have you all looked at anything from an acute standpoint? Because this seems to be in the topical form one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories I've experienced on myself. Clinically, I've now been getting it out to a handful of patients, and I haven't had any negative feedback except one patient. But it's in an acute situation. When I've talked to you down at the A4A meeting, I was convinced that this is part of what I need to do on a day-to-day basis, just biohacking, longevity, just better health, those types of things. I had no idea that it had this added bonus of just super anti-inflammatory local effect.
We have seen local as well as systemic effect. And so we do have a lot of professional athletes using this product. They work out, the amount of workout they do in a day, I can do in a month. They do it every single day. The amount of stress they put in the body on a daily basis. And then they go in this cold plunge therapy to basically soak all the inflammation down. And then they are in there for X number of minutes. Then they're doing massage therapies, trying to reduce inflammation, increase the lymphatic drainage so inflammation goes down. And all these athletes, when they started using the glutathione, they saw the reduction in the recovery time. Typically, they work out for 2 to 3 hours in the morning, and they have another 6 to 8 hours of recovery every single day. And they do all these different things to recover the body so they can ready for the next day. Or they're playing football on a weekend, and they have to get ready for that game. And so what they have noticed is that the recovery time has reduced into half. And what they're saying to us is that the inflammation is coming down like they have never seen this before. And it's not the type of inflammation that they are talking about, because they can get the inflammation down with NSAIDs like Motrins and ketoprofens and Voltarens and all those medications that we have. But that just masks the inflammation and masks the pain, but doesn't get them the recovery that they're looking for. And the glutathione is not just helping them with the inflammation, but the recovery is faster. And that is something that is fascinating to me. So right now we have a lot of Olympic athletes, a lot of professional ball players that they have got to. It's like the word of mouth, right? When one person gets better, they say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And so it's just spreading the locker rooms right now at this point.
Right. Well, I think the message that you certainly convey very well in the book is that there are myriad conditions that the patient can benefit from this topical application, the product that you all have developed. Let's talk about peripheral neuropathy. What do you think is the main mechanism of Glutaril in helping these folks? Because you had a little vignette in there, I think it was about Bob, And after about 10 days or so, his burning went away in his feet. So what do you think? Because we know there's so many contributory things to neuropathic processes. And I hate the word neuropathy because it really doesn't mean anything other than there's a problem with the nerve outside the central nervous system. So give me some insight on that, because there's got to be multiple roles it's playing at the same time.
Yeah. So in the story of Bob, again, I'm not sure which story included in my book, because I have so many other stories like those, like Bob.
Right.
And I believe so his doctor diagnosed him with post-herpetic neuralgias. Okay. And he was suffering for not just years, but years and years and years. And he has never found anything that has actually worked for him. And of course, he was not in his best health. He was depressed. He was not enjoying life. He had all the money in the world that money can buy, but he was not enjoying life. And right. So the doctor, he just calls me up and said, "Hey, is this going to help in neuropathy?" I said, "Doc, I have no idea. Right? You are my eyes and ears in the society to find out what all the possible cause." I said, "Give Bob the product. Don't charge him anything, but tell him to use it every single day and see what happens." And so, yes, 10 days later, his tingling starts going away. And about 30 days later, he was out of his wheelchair and using a cane to walk. And I mean, of course, his lawyer saw this part. They go, "Oh, Bob's going to make it now, and he's going to live for a little bit longer. What's going to happen to us, right?" And so his lawyer called me up once too. I said, "Hey, what are you doing to Bob? He's feeling great. I hope it's not something illegal that you're giving us, right?" He says, "Oh, no, absolutely. It's just glutathione." I said, "I've never heard of glutathione being so powerful before." But anyway, so that was the story. So we have treated patients with the post-herpetic neuralgias with physicians, and that's where the success is coming from. Well, when it comes from something like diabetic neuropathy or some other neuropathic pain, I don't know yet. I don't know. I don't have all the answers yet for those kinds of patients as to how are they seeing benefits, why are they seeing benefits, other than the fact that what we do see is that when we help increase the glutathione level, it helps mobilize adipose tissue. It helps mobilize fat cells. It has a positive effect on triglycerides, because that is also increasing fats in your liver, and insulin being the most atherogenic chemical that our body produces is putting an undue stress on our body, and glutathione has a positive effect on reduction of those stress markers. Is that what's causing the relief of neuropathic pain? I don't know yet. So we still need to do more studies to figure that portion out.
Glutaril is the first of its kind transdermal glutathione, as it uses an innovative and patented delivery system to deliver the glutathione. The ROGSH technology works to first protect the glutathione from oxidation, maintaining its integrity during delivery, and secondly, uses breakthrough sub-nanotechnology to deliver it for maximum absorption and efficacy. Glutaril is a solution to help patients maintain glutathione levels at home and allow them to experience the many benefits of this master antioxidant. To learn more about their professional wholesale program for practitioners, please visit our show notes on the Pod of Inquiry website at podofinquiry.com. I can tell you have to integrate this for yourself as well as for your patients. I've been using it for 6 months now, and it is extraordinary. I've had several acute episodes where this was an absolute game changer, and I could notice a relief in pain within a matter of minutes. Usually by 30 minutes, my pain was gone. This includes muscular soreness from the weekend warrior syndrome to hornet bites on the end of your ring finger. So start implementing this today for not only yourself, but your patients. They will love you for it. Well, I think, neuropathic processes are multifactorial and very complex. And anybody who says they really understand them is not being truthful or deluded. But there almost always is some component of a microvascular impairment. There's also almost always a neuroinflammatory component. So, I think there's no question if we're able to, and what's happening with the toxins that these patients are exposed to. I mean, I have many patients that their neuropathy, we track it down because they've been classified as idiopathic. And probably about half of the idiopathic cases that we get, we can make them unidiopathic just by lifting a lot of rocks, a lot of testing. And it's amazing how much reactivated Epstein-Barr we're seeing right now, how much Lyme there is, and mold. And in the Southeast, down here in Georgia, there's a hell of a lot of mold going on. And these are real easy things to measure if you think about them and then measure them. So I think there's multiple contributory factors. And unfortunately, there is no one rule that says a human can only have one cause or one etiology to their problem. So I think really a lot of them are multifactorial. But from a neuropathic standpoint, anytime you can make the human more optimized, they will get better. Will it? Yeah, I mean, it's just a simple fact of almost any disease will do that same thing. So I was just wondering if you had some, more esoteric biochemical, biophysiology theories on maybe why glutathione is affecting the peripheral nerve. Now, I think, from a central nervous standpoint, if it's donating an electron, and that just makes sense because, your mitochondria in these neurocognitive conditions is maybe 40% from a ATP standpoint of what it ideally would be. So that's going to upregulate just from an energetic standpoint.
So I want to talk about something that we're going through for the last couple of years. We have seen a lot of inflammation, a lot of breathing issues. And if you look at all the markers, of course, you look at TNF alpha, IL-2, IL-6, IL-10s, tumor necrosis factors, TNFs, all those things. I mean, we have medications to treat every single markers on those things with some sort of anti-inflammatory, some sort of steroids, something to bring those inflammatory markers down.
Right.
If we go one step above and see what the macrophages are doing to all these ailments before they start getting into these various inflammatory markers, glutathione actually stops at the macrophage levels. And that's how it helps with the inflammation and is non-specific for all these different markers.
So it's hitting it higher up on the pathway.
It's just hitting it way up high in the pathway. So we don't have to worry about all these different drugs that we have in our arsenal to treat one inflammatory marker. It just goes right at the top and just cuts the head off. And so if is that what's causing the reduction in the pain? Again, we don't know all the answers yet. How is glutathione attacking that? Right? Mm-hmm. And we don't have that answer yet. Are we seeing increase in blood oxygen concentration? And the answer is yes. So we are seeing the aftermath of once we give the glutathione. We're seeing that part, but how is it affecting that part is still a mystery to me personally.
Well, let's go back to that 1 second, because you're saying that after treatment with glutathione, you see an improved oxygen saturation?
Yep.
Well, that's a pretty significant biomarker, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And
right.
This is the same professor at the university. There's a local school of medicine over here that's doing all this work for us. And this is what he noticed it. And it says that somebody coming with SATs down to in the high 70s or even low 70s, and while they're doing the regular treatments to help them get better, they put the glutathione, and within 24 to 48 hours, the SATs are back down to 99%. And so that was incredible. Of course, it's not getting rid of the diseases that they're suffering from right now, but just the one marker. If we can improve one marker, guess what? No, people don't have to suffer for shortness of breath or go to ventilators if they can just breathe normally on their own.
Right. Now, what's the biochemistry interplay between nitric oxide and glutathione?
So that is something that we found as a side effect of glutathione. When we give glutathione at a pace that has, I hate to use the word unprecedented because now it's too late. It's already been 13 years since we've been doing this thing. Right. But when you give glutathione at a pace that the body is not accustomed to having so much at one given point, it's going to trigger increased production of nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is good for you in a slow concentration, but if you produce too fast, too much, of course, it's also one of those oxidative species that is not good for you long term if it gets too much of it. The right amount is just absolutely great. So when we did that part, we did see nitric oxide rash that you normally see a rash when you have too much nitric oxide in your body. You see a rash develop on your body. We've seen that part when we use glutathione. And only thing that's telling me is that it's too much, too fast for your body to accept at this point. And so by reducing the dose down, they feel just fine. So it's not so again, this is anecdotal, and that has not been studied yet. But of course, in the pharmacy, we all have this saliva kits, this test strips.
Right.
That the color changes is so profound, right? You can literally see the thing turning bright pink because that's the indicator that the nitric oxide is high in your body.
So it's testing the nitrite then.
Nitrite,
right.
Immediately, within like 4 minutes.
So most of our folks, we test routinely with those strips, and almost every one of them are nitric oxide depleted. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so it'd be great for us to start having them apply a little Glutarel and then test them and see what happens. And I think that it may not be a bad thing that you're seeing this enhancement of nitric oxide after the glutathione administration, because most people are really severely low in it to begin with. So, but that leads into, and you touch about it in your book, what's the toxic dose of topical glutathione? There is none. There you go.
Right. There is none. There is no. Of course, glutathione has been designated a GRAS test by FDA when consumed orally. So do not fool yourself that if you take topical or IVs, that is not what the FDA is saying. FDA is saying if you consume oral glutathione, it's considered it has a GRAS status. That means it's safe at any concentration, any dose for anybody. So again, if you just change the delivery system, things change. But what we have found out is that just because it's safe at any concentration, is that what your body needs? And so, as a pharmacist, my mind has been thinking for the last 13 years is that what is the exact dose I want to give my patient to see the outcomes I'm looking for? So I had a fortune of one of the physicians out of Salt Lake City, Utah, did a study for us, and he was basically studying on his patients as to how many milligrams can I give of glutathione to get the best results I want, right?
Right.
So he started with giving 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams, 200, 300, 400, up to 600 milligrams of topical glutathione that we have, the Glutarel. What we found out to our amazement was that 100 milligram gave you the best cost-effective increase in your blood.
And that's 4 sprays?
That's 4 sprays of Glutarel.
Right.
I mean, 100 milligrams. Yet I myself made IV preparation for 20 years, and the protocol calls out for between 1 to 2 grams of IV push after a Myers cocktail or any of the IV treatments that patients do.
Right.
1 or 2 grams, and yet what we are seeing is with 100 milligrams, I get far better results.
Well, I think I'm blanking right now on a couple of examples of that, but there are other examples of that pharmacological effect in medicine. I think one of them is methylene blue, and methylene blue used at a pretty low dose has some pretty good benefits as an electron donor. And at a high dose, it does different things and may react differently. So sometimes the highest dose isn't the best dose, right?
No, it's not. Yeah. And I always tell people, we do have Glutathione Plus as a product available at double the concentration, right. Almost double the concentration. And people think that just because it's more glutathione is better for me. And I tell people all the time, I said, check with your doctor. I don't think so. You're not going to need that much glutathione to begin with. But if you have an acute problem that you want to deal with it today, yes, the Glutathione Plus is great for you because it's going to get rid of the acute problems that you have right now. But for maintenance, the glutathione 100 milligrams twice a day is all you need. And I have billionaires that think that, oh, is it going to hurt me if I take more? I said, no, it's not going to hurt you. It's just you're just going to waste some more money. Oh, I got plenty of money.
Right.
And so it's not about the money. In medicine, it's never about the money. In medicine, it's all about effective doses.
Right.
That's it.
Well, I think in some of these folks that are loaded up with mold and heavy metals, that it makes sense that you're going to have to probably start them out at a higher dosage, and then get them to a maintenance stage. So there was one other question that I wanted to circle back on, and that was discussed in your book very well about how glutathione is able to enable these other antioxidants and vitamin C, vitamin A, E, CoQ10, and there's probably one other one that I can't remember, but I think that's fascinating from a physiological standpoint. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So glutathione, if it's such an important molecule in your body has a way to recycle the glutathione. And the way it recycles is that if a glutathione, which is GSH molecule, gives up an electron to neutralize a free radical, it becomes GS charged molecule. 2 GS charged molecules comes together and make GSSG molecule, which is another inert product in our body, which is they call it oxidized glutathione as GSSG molecule, and it's in our body. So GSSG and GSH tend to stay in equilibrium. This GSSG molecule will take electrons from vitamin C, CoQ10, and all those so-called antioxidants. They'll take the charged molecules from them, and then this GSSG molecule will split again into 2 GSH molecules again. Regenerates itself. So my theory, again, this is going back to the mechanical engineering, I think that vitamin C is probably not an antioxidant. Because at low dose, it's regenerating glutathione, but at a high dose, vitamin C is actually a pro-oxidant. Right. And we know that part, right? And so I'm thinking, and that could be the same thing with methylene blue. I do not know that part yet, so don't quote me on it. But I'm thinking at low dose, all these products are actually feeding to regenerate glutathione, because glutathione is every single day is giving up electrons, neutralizing all the free radicals from oxygens, and become GSSG molecule. And with the NADH and NAD, that pathway regenerates the GSSG to infect the GSH again, and that's what functions in our body. So yes, we can do NAD, we can do vitamin C, we can do CoQ10 or vitamin E and all those things. All it's doing is, I call glutathione as the general, and all the soldiers all they're doing is they're giving up their blood, the general, so the general doesn't die ever.
So they may have theoretically the majority of their antioxidant effect solely through their benefit to glutathione.
That's what I am suspecting. But
So
on the flip side, we do see vitamin C when they use topically. We do see vitamin C has some effect on increasing collagen.
Right.
And that has nothing to do with antioxidant effect.
Right.
My theory is that the increase in collagen is a stimulation, and the stimulation only comes from oxidative species, not from redox species. And
so it's the ROS upregulates the fibroblast to some extent. And
that's what we see. Yeah.
Now, is glutathione made de novo inside the mitochondria, or is it made in one space and then transported from the cytosol into the mitochondria? Tell me a little bit about how that mechanism works.
So my understanding that it is made inside the cell. It is not transported.
It's made within the mitochondria as well as within the cytosol.
Within the cytosol. And that's what, if you think about cancer cells loves glutathione, right? And it doesn't produce its own glutathione, so it hijacks your body's own pressure of glutathione. That's why when people have cancer, they're lethargic and tired and fatigued all the time, right?
Okay.
Because it attacks your own body's pressure of glutathione, and just it survives on that one. And of course, my mind's theory goes and say, if that's true, then if I give exogenous glutathione to a body, your endogenous pressure will go down, will stop. And if that happens, is there a possibility that the cancer cell is not going to survive because it doesn't have the energy source from the human cells that is producing glutathione? Of course, it's a fascinating theory at this time, but it just makes sense to me. I said, hey, is there something that can be studied in the future that are possible that we can starve the cancer cells of glutathione by supplementing exogenously?
Well, it's interesting. It makes me think back to the Warburg effect and, some of the things that they're doing up at some of the oncology centers with ketogenic diets, because they know that the cancer cell can only, metabolize glucose, and it doesn't, BH beta butyrate. I'm blanking on the. But anyhow, basically, the ketone bodies are not energetic to a cancer cell because they've lost their ability, and they can only go through the process with sugar. So you can kind of try to starve them. I think there's a gentleman up at Boston University called by the name of Thomas Seyfried, who's written some really interesting things about press pulse diets for augmentation in oncology, which is kind of circling back a little bit to what you're talking about with the glutathione.
Yeah. And of course, the ketogenic diet can also increase the production of glutathione on its own. And, And so if that's also true, then it may be supporting the cancer cells a little bit, not enough, but just a little bit to give the glutathione. But the cancer cells need a lot of energy. And of course, it needs energy from glutathione, but more than that, it needs energy from the sugars. Right. Sugar is the way bigger source of energy than anything else in the body.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's so much when you start looking at these things that you realize there's so much we don't know. It's pretty humbling, isn't it?
It is pretty humbling. And so I want to go back to your questions from the beginning that you asked me about how did the mechanical engineering play a part in this, in my life today?
Right.
So I'll give you a little bit of tidbit right now. This glutathione molecule that we have created is actually an engineered product, so to speak, mechanically engineered product. Because
Okay.
what we're taking the glutathione is, it's a three-dimensional product. It's a protein.
Right.
And we have actually shrunk the size mechanically
Okay.
to
So
deliver.
you took the same constituents, the three amino acids,
Uh-huh.
and then you rearranged its stereochemistry into a tighter package. Is that?
No,
No?
no, I'm not that smart. I took the glutathione molecule itself.
Yeah.
I took the glutathione molecule itself, and basically in three-dimensional structure, I literally I just pivoted down to a small ball. If
Okay.
you think about a car shade, right? When you're in the sun, you put the car shade, it just opens up and it opens
Yes.
the car shade, and then
Right.
you basically fold it down to make it a
Right.
small volume.
Right.
Same thing. This three amino acids molecule in the three-dimensional structure, I just twisted it to make it into small balls.
So same molecular weight.
Nothing's changed. Nothing has changed.
And is this the nanotechnology that you talk about? And it's able to get through these water pores that you talk about?
Yeah, that's exactly how it's done. So that's how, because the thing is, nothing goes to your skin, right?
Right.
Especially water. Water will never go to your skin. And if you see the product is water-based product, completely water-based product, there's not a single solvent, there's not a single enhancer, or nothing in there. How does it get through your skin?
So when they put things in liposomes, that's going to affect the transdermal bioavailability.
Yeah, so liposome is different because liposome is still forming lipid layers around the molecule, right?
Right.
So the hydrophobic part is inside to where it attaches to the glutathione, and outside is the hydrophobic part is outside, and the hydrophilic part is inside. And so what happens is that the outside molecule will attach to the lipid layers of your skin, and by slow diffusion, it goes down. But again, it's a slow process, and if you look at all the studies of liposomal technology, it doesn't raise the glutathione levels for at least 3 to 4 weeks, and the raise is what, 25, 27%, 30% maximum, and I bet you, and there was a study done by University of Texas in 2010 that all the increase that they see in the whole blood is in the serum, is in the plasma, not in the red blood cells. And so my understanding is that, yes, even if it increases the levels, it is not increasing in the blood cells where we actually need it. That's where the magic is happening, not in the outside.
Interesting. So we have covered a lot today. And is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to share about glutathione?
I want to discuss one thing because I've done this numerous podcasts and there's numerous articles on one thing, which is weight loss. And this is not a weight loss product, so do not quote me on that at all. It's not a weight loss product at all. But why are people using this product and losing a lot of weight? And that is happening across the board. And so I want to touch up on, because weight is a multifactorial problem, right? And so I want to give it an analogy right now. If you live in an apartment complex that's 10-story high, and if something happened to on the 6th floor, apartment number 6B, does it affect anything on apartment 6A or 1B or 10C? Nothing, right? It's just isolated problem.
Right.
Now imagine the same apartment complex, no walls and no floors. Everything can go up and down in a zero gravity area, and everything is free flowing.
Okay.
If anything happens to somebody that was supposed to be in 6A or 6B, is affecting the whole body now. So to me, weight is affecting the whole body, right? If somebody has weight issue, they may have type 2 diabetes, they may have fatty liver disease, they may have fatigue, they may have hormonal issues. I mean, it's a multifactorial problem. Toxicity levels are high because fat stores more fat-soluble organic phosphates, organic chemicals. So what we have seen is, again, this is not just the glutathione. So I want to bring up a second point over here. That's the reason I'm saying this thing. When we did this glutathione molecule to reach the ball size, we use a mechanical system to do that for us.
Okay.
That mechanical system, when it hits the body, again, that mechanical system, which is dextrins, which is already labeled on the product itself, also has a GRAS status by FDA.
Okay.
That is the system that you find in your cereal box and in your packaged goods everywhere. If you heard the word maltodextrins in your food item, that's just one of the dextrins. There are literally hundreds of different dextrins out in the market today. It's a physical system to trap all these molecules, okay? And we use that to trap glutathione, change the structure, send it to your body, and when it goes to the body, the glutathione gets released. Now, this mechanical system is, guess what? Is now free to pick up fat.
Mm-hmm.
And
so maybe let me just interject. We know that high levels of circulating free fatty acids are very neuroinflammatory.
Yes.
Could this play a role in why maybe these folks aren't burning after they put the glutarol on for 10 days? Maybe they're free. Maybe it's affecting the levels of their free fatty acids, or is there something going on maybe with how it's affecting the GLUT4 transporter, insulin resistance? I'm just asking. I have no idea.
It could be both. It could be both. I know one thing for a fact is that we do get patients with high ALT, AST levels on the high liver enzymes. Again, the doctor has not diagnosed with anything yet. So when we get these patients up, and we know liver is full of glutathione, the highest production of glutathione happens in your liver, and all these patients have zero glutathione levels. Just by replacing glutathione levels, we are seeing reduction of those levels back to under 20. And so we have had patients that the doctors have called me up and said, hey, I just did an ultrasound on this patient and the fatty liver is kind of diminished a lot. And so it's interesting is that we are getting secondary effects. And fatty liver is not just fats in your liver. It's everywhere, right? It's type 2 diabetes, it's obesity, it's everywhere. And so my theory is that it may not be the glutathione that's doing all this work, but the complex that we have created is what's doing multitude of work, not just the glutathione by itself. And so I don't want to make glutathione sound like it's the holy grail of every single thing, but the complex that we have created as a combination is absolutely 2 + 2 is 5. It has a lot of synergistic effects going together. And that's what we want to explore more and more of these ones at this point. So anyways, I just want to mention this last bit.
No, I think that was important because you talked about treatment of NAFLD in your book, and there's certainly a lot of that running around now. And but I think it goes back full circle that, if we can get our patient healthy, and glutathione obviously plays a huge role, then maybe it gives the body a chance to catch up with itself. And maybe we're not so special as surgeons and physicians that all we have to do is get out of our way and let these people get healthy and do some healthy things and supplement with the right things. So,
one more thing, I had a pharmacist did a study on us too.
Yeah.
One of my friend pharmacists, of course, he was not treating NASH or NAFLD disease, but he was treating patients with just high triglycerides. Of course, he only had 5 patients, something like that. And since then, we have done hundreds of patients after that too. But what he saw, it's in the book as well. What he saw was that the triglyceride levels were going down. And some of these triglyceride patients, of course, they were not his. He was the pharmacist, and the doctors were treating them. The doctor called them up and said, "Hey, 2 of patients, the ALT/AST levels are back to normal. What did you give them?" And in fact, what he was doing was he was treating triglyceride levels. Again, triglycerides, again, fats in your bloodstream as well. And so same thing. So obesity is not just fats in your blood, fats in your liver, everywhere else. If you can trap those fats down, reduce the triglyceride levels, help with NASH, help with ALT, AST levels, it has some legs to stand on at this point. And I urge all the healthcare providers to look into it and see if we can do some work together to try to figure this thing out.
So I want to thank you for this because it's, it's incredibly important. And I know how busy you are. And so thanks for taking the time. But you have to tell us, we're going to link in the show notes because I have a feeling a lot of our listeners are going to want to start integrating this not only on themselves, but with their patients. And your product is only physician available. Is that correct?
The plus is they can buy it online, but the patient have to put the doctors that they've been treated by in the field before to buy. Otherwise, they won't be able to buy the product.
So the physicians can then either get it and dispense it themselves in the office, or they can give a code or something. And we'll give all that in the show notes, how they can get this product to their folks and to themselves. I think if you're listening to this and you don't believe this, you should do two things. One, get the book. And then number two, go out and try to find some hornet's nests and get a few stings and then put it on. And you will be a believer. So anyhow, Nayan, thank you so much and really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me today.
All right, great. Have a great weekend. I hope you all enjoyed today's show and got some truly empowering knowledge out of it. You can always follow up on anything we talked about in the show notes found at our website, podofinquiry.com. If you think you might have tickled just a few neurons inside that cerebral cortex, please spread the word to your friends and colleagues and tell them that they need to get spelunking. Also, if you can take a minute to leave a review on your podcast provider of choice, and especially Apple Podcasts, that would greatly help the show and be so appreciated, provided it's positive. And if not, then just keep your pie hole shut and stay down in that cave. Let's keep spelunking.
This podcast is designed for informational purposes only and does not constitute any medical or surgical consulting advice or imply a development of any physician-patient relationship. The opinions of guests who are featured on the show are not necessarily the opinions of Dr. Barrett or the production team. This podcast is owned solely by Barrett Medical and Surgical Media, LLC. While the show is highly oriented for physicians and healthcare providers, anyone interested in the improvement of human performance and understanding will find this a welcome goblet to sip from, or guzzle. However, no representation or warranties are made in any way whatsoever on this podcast for any products, techniques, or other things discussed. Invited guests are not vetted by the Pod of Inquiry for their qualifications and may have a direct or indirect financial interest in what they present and discuss on the show. The Pod of Inquiry disclaims any responsibility from anything taken from the show and used personally or professionally. It is a responsibility of the listener to perform their own due diligence prior to the implementation of any ideas, products, techniques, or anything talked about on the show.